So, ihr Lieben, heute erwartet euch bei diesem Podcast nicht die liebe Sophia, die sonst immer hier ist, sondern heute übernehme ich das mal und es hat einen guten Grund. Und zwar bin ich gerade in San Francisco auf der Climate Week und ich habe es geschafft, einen aus meiner Sicht der spannendsten Investoren aus den Vereinigten Staaten überhaupt im Bereich Energie hier vor die Kamera zu zerren und in den Podcast. Der wartet quasi schon darauf, mit mir hier in den Ring zu steigen. Er ist einer der Leute, die erneuerbaren Energien geprägt haben wie kein zweiter. Er macht das Ganze seit 15 Jahren. Er war bei den ganz, ganz großen Namen im Venture Capital. Und er hat Einblicke sowohl in den Bereich AI, aber auch Energie, die spannender nicht sein könnten. Und ich freue mich schon wirklich massiv darauf, dass er uns das Vertrauen schenkt. Und ich hoffe, es macht euch Spaß und ihr nehmt viel mit nach Hause. Ben, it finally happens. We have our podcast of 1,5 here in San Francisco. And it's so great to see you. As you know, this has been one of my dreams to actually have you in public and ask you all the questions I want, and you actually have to answer. So I'm looking forward to our discussion. And I think, first of all, it makes sense to have a small introduction. I think it makes sense if you introduce yourself to the audience. Most of the listeners already know me, and I think they are tuning in because of you. And maybe we start with who you are and what you have been doing and how you actually came across 1,5. I think that will be a great start to let everyone know who you are.
Great. Well, thanks for having me on the podcast. Thanks for making the journey across the Atlantic to come and do this. So I'm Ben. I'm originally from Australia. I've been in the US most of my life, and I've been investing in the energy transition and climate tech space for over 20 years now. When I was at Goldman Sachs in 2005, I stumbled into alternative energy when wind and solar were first becoming exciting technologies and fell in love with the space and have been investing in it ever since. At Kleiner Perkins, where I formed and ran the Green Growth Fund, and then at G2VP, where we continued that mission of investing in the winning companies in the climate tech space as they were breaking out as winners. One of the areas that I've spent a lot of my time on over that 20-year period has been solar, and in particular, downstream residential solar. I invested in 2010 in a company called Enphase, which has been one of the big winners and pioneers of rooftop solar and distributed solar over that time period. I've been on the board now for 16 years. It's been a tremendous journey. And the CEO of Enphase, Badri Kothandaraman, did a trip to Europe in 2022. And when he came back, being the venture capitalist I am, always looking for good ideas, I asked him, what's the best company you saw in Europe? And he said 1,5 is going to win Europe. So, of course, we dusted off our deep dive that we'd done in the space, came to see you and many others in the European ecosystem to see what's going on. And 1,5 stood out as the winner, not just in what I'd call Energy 2.0, which is delivering home electrification in the most efficient, effective way with the best customer reviews and customer experience possible, but also the vision that you sold of Energy 3.0, Heartbeat, where you would optimize behind the meter energy. So we invested in 2023, and the company has tripled since then, roughly, as you know, and is well on that journey to Energy 3.0. Maybe you can tell us how that journey's going, and are you delivering on the vision that you sold us?
Yeah, I mean, to actually maneuver out of that very difficult question, I think for the audience and also in my mind, if we have the opportunity in this podcast to have somebody from the US who has been in the ecosystem for decades as a venture capitalist, obviously we're sitting in San Francisco before we come to 1,5 and you grill me in front of everyone, we should definitely touch on AI, right? I mean, it's since I have arrived in San Francisco, the real topic right now, or the only topic, seems to be AI. And what I find really interesting is to see how AI also brings the narrative back to energy. That's something that I found in the discussions here. So that AI actually is very related to energy. But I mean, I'm not the venture capitalist, you are. How do you see AI and how is it, in your view, connected to energy? And I know that you have a decacorn in your portfolio. So I know that you have other investments that have been incredibly successful also in using AI as a tailwind for the business cases they have, but at the same time being deep into energy. So how do you look at AI in general, and how is energy affected by it, and vice versa? I mean, it's not only AI does not only affect energy because there's so much demand for energy, but it's also the other way around. Energy is changing because of AI.
Yeah. So first of all, this AI technology wave could be the biggest technology wave of our lifetimes. There's still a lot to be unpacked, but there is a massive wave of technology development, and the promise, if you look at McKinsey, is that it has doubled the impact of any other technology introduction of the last century. Internal combustion engines, telecom, all of that could be doubled by AI in terms of GDP impact. We don't know if all of that is going to happen. What we do know is going to happen is a massive infrastructure build-out. $5 trillion will be spent over the next 5 years building AI data centers, and they need energy. It's creating a rise in energy demand in a way that we haven't seen in the last 40 years. And that is having an impact on the grid. It's having an impact on the energy ecosystem. It's having an impact on consumers because of rising energy prices and increasing volatility. As an investor, we love that theme. We're also making some bets on AI itself and the applications of AI, but we love the picks and shovels theme of how do we build the energy infrastructure to do this? How do we do it as cleanly as possible? How do we do it as efficiently as possible? And then what are the implications of that build out on energy itself, on grid volatility, on the consumer experience? We've seen the example in the Iberian Peninsula where with rising data center demand, the grid went down because you have these massive baseload demands with lots of volatility. You have increasing volatility on the supply side of energy as well, and that creates a more unstable grid. The question is, as an investor, what are the technologies that we can invest in that will help solve that problem, that grid stabilization problem, and the clean energy for data centers problem?
Okay, but tell us a bit more of also where you invested. I know where you invested, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's such a great story aside of 1,5 because, of course, I think we can summarize, even in Europe, we will need data centers.
Yep.
Even if LLM models are not going to be designed there, we will have a lot of data centers because otherwise the latency is too high. So this is coming, right? And we know the grid cannot be scaled in a way that it is going to have sufficient throughput. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to use the grid will be the bottleneck, and you'll have to optimize the capacity, right? And one way is like 1,5, you get all those micro assets and you use them as a big lever of flexibility to help better utilize the grid and also bring cost efficient electricity to the users. But another one is that you simply decouple from it. And I think one of the companies you invested in is doing exactly that, right? I mean, they try to really, in a smart way, generate electricity on site. But tell us more, and also tell us what can you say about the company? What can you say about the incredible journey it did? I mean, also the evaluation is insane. I mean, for European standards, that is extremely rare. So tell us a bit more.
Yeah, so the company you're referring to is Crusoe. We found Crusoe in 2021 through another one of these deep dives that led us to investing in 1,5. We were looking at companies that could deal with stranded energy and turn it into something useful. And the idea, of course, was...
What's stranded energy?
Stranded energy, for example, is if you have methane in an oil field that you can't get to market, you just burn it or in an open flare, or you have energy generation, too much wind generation or too much solar generation, you can't transmit it back to the market because of transmission line constraints. So we were trying to figure out what's the best use of that. And we're of course, entering an era then where you had ubiquitous communications through Starlink and other wireless satellite communications. So the idea was put the compute where the energy is, rather than building energy where you want to put your compute. Crusoe had an amazing team, technology, and had productized in a way that they could put compute anywhere. It didn't matter if there was grid, no grid. It didn't matter if there's communication, no communication. They could build it, operate it in very, very tough environments. When we went to visit their first installations, it was minus 20 degrees. And you might ask, is it Fahrenheit or Celsius? It's both. And they were able to operate those at high 90s uptime in really, really difficult environments that would go to 40 degrees Celsius to minus 20 degrees Celsius. And that capability turned out to be a very, very important capability for the future of the grid. We invested in Crusoe at the start of 2022. It was the investment we did just before 1,5. And the company has grown tremendously because the demand for building compute infrastructure has grown tremendously. And the constraint is you can't just plug into the grid anywhere you want. Crusoe's capability of building the data centers where the energy is a tremendously powerful asset. So they'll put them where there's excessive wind and solar. They'll put them where there happens to be backup, natural gas pipeline for backup energy, if that's the appropriate thing. They can put them anywhere. And that capability allows them to build data centers faster and build them cheaper and build them greener, although frankly, that's not the most important thing right now in this data. It will be important, but it's not the most important thing in winning this data center build out. So the company's gone from a small pilot installation in cloud compute, 0.5 megawatt, to at the time that we invested, to they are now completing their first gigawatt-scale data center. And just for context, that's a $40 billion data center. They have a handful of others of similar-sized data centers being that they're working on right now, and the company you just referenced has a double-digit billions valuation, which might sound crazy. To me, it feels cheap compared to what they're accomplishing as a company. They are they call themselves the AI factory company, the company that can build the data centers, the inference stack, and the inference as a service that will allow anyone to go to AI training and inference anywhere that they need to.
Incredible, and also incredible to see the speed. I remember visiting you, I think in 23 or 20, I don't know, might be 24. And we had your LP meeting, and they were there, and how all of this, how all of this escalated like unbelievable. The amount of resources available, the dynamics available, but also what you can see now. This is. The ripple effects go all the way to Europe. Right now, gas turbines in Europe are sold out because they're all going to the US. If you look at Siemens Energy, is one of the companies in Germany actually that is going crazy in evaluation because they know how to do all those gas turbines and so on. But actually, conventional energy now is being drained, talent resources, conventional resources, turbines, all of that. So you can already see that in Europe, it gets more expensive in every vertical that we actually see, which is for us a helping momentum, yeah. But it's also a big constraint because you now have the politicians sitting there, and I think it's the same in the US, and they're realizing this will increase prices for consumers. Yep. And the question is, no one in Europe, not even the Americans, can optimize or modernize the grid, the power grid, at scale within the next 20 years. They could do it in some, strategic points, but they will not do it at scale. So the question is, how do we fix that problem of utilizing the grids better without having consumer prices going through the roof, right? And this is, it would be interesting to maybe shift the discussion a bit to Europe. And if you look at Europe, what do you see in terms of energy markets and trends? I mean, Europe has a reputation here in the US to be almost a failed state, yeah, and that it's dysfunctional. But what do you see if you look to Europe?
I'm going to start in Australia. I know it's not part of Europe, but I think it's the future.
1,5 is active in Australia. So
1,5 is
talk
active
about
in
it,
Australia.
Yeah.
So if you look at the market in Australia, they are solving the problem. They're adding renewables at a faster rate than relatively speaking, than almost any other country. They're adding batteries at a faster rate than almost any other country. They have very high penetration, and they have an open free market where consumers get paid to charge their battery at a time when there's oversupply, and they get paid to discharge it when there's undersupply. You can use the existing assets that are on the grid. You know this. I'm preaching to the choir here, but you can use the existing assets on the grid to stabilize the grid. I'm going to come all the way to here in San Francisco. We're in a regulated monopoly utility situation. There is no price signal. I have almost no incentive to change my energy consumption during the day. It doesn't make economic sense for me even to get a battery because I don't get a payback on it. So Europe, I think, is halfway in between and headed in the Australia direction. Europe's a net energy importer, fossil fuels, and it buys all the equipment. It doesn't make its renewables equipment. And so it has to make the best economic decisions, and it has to use the assets that it has as effectively as possible. It's also, a lot of the gas comes from Russia. We're seeing increasing geopolitical volatility, energy volatility. If you're a consumer in Europe, you've got to be thinking about this and where am I getting my energy from? You want to have your own energy supply, you want to have potentially backup power, and you want to have it be as cheap as possible in a rising and more volatile market. So I don't think Europe is a failed state at all in the context of energy. In fact, I think it's ahead of where most of the US is. There are a few US markets which have these type of price signals and where it makes sense to operate in the Australia type model. But I think Europe is actually going there, already headed there, and will move there faster as a result of all of the things that are happening in geopolitics and energy volatility.
Yeah, and I mean, now preaching back to you as a choir as well, that's exactly also what we see as the European trend. We see that consumers now understand renewables and especially own generated solar, but also dynamic tariffs is something that is more. It's not only, it used to be innovative. It used to be already in the last couple of years cheaper than the electricity from the grid, but people now perceive it as safer. And more reliable, and as you know, we see that this flywheel starts working. So we see that people are entering through various technologies into the electrification cycle. So people are buying an EV, so they need a charge point. They are more likely to buy a solar system. They are more likely to buy a battery. They are more likely to buy a heat pump. They are also more likely to get air conditioning, because once you electrify, there's a real flywheel happening. And at the same time, these units are either a huge problem for the grids, because if they just do whatever, like all at the same time, they cause additional loads that are not steered, that are not smart. So the flywheel works, which is putting additional pressure on the grids. And now, as you know, with Heartbeat, we see the second flywheel. Once you apply Heartbeat AI, and this is what we also love about AI, 1,5 could not be where it is today if we would not have the accessibility to the amount of automation. We are optimizing every smart meter individually. Every customer is being optimized on all the parameters. Without AI, this would, or at least machine learning, this would not be possible. You could simply not steer such a fleet. But what we see is people are electrifying, and it's like an entry into the full electrification. And at the same time, once they apply Heartbeat and they see that they can reduce cost by almost 90%, of course, they start using even more electricity, and also the amortization goes down, right? The question is how to scale this faster, right? I mean, also from our perspective, we still see the political rollback, I think also caused by Trump, so that gas and oil is still trying to hold on and get back. What do you think needs to happen in Europe, or what business models do you see? I know that you know all the big incumbents, so Octopus, Enphase, maybe also E.ON and others, E.ON. So what do you think needs to happen on the electrification front? What needs to happen also on the what's the winning business model? Obviously, you're tainted because you're invested with us, but what do you see, and also what has proven wrong? I mean, what I love about you, other than being incredibly smart and good looking, is that you have seen it all, and it's very rare to talk to investors who have been living through those solar cycles, wind at the beginning. So what has not worked? Maybe we start with that. What are the business models that you have seen, especially in solar, that are uninvestable and also have proven that they do not deliver?
Yeah. So the US solar industry has been through a long cycle of trying to push hardware to consumers. Consumers don't understand energy. If you push a hardware product to them, they're like, I don't really understand what this is. How does it work? Is it going to last a long time? What if I move from the house? That whole selling cycle has proven to be difficult. And so the industry then shifted toward, let's do zero money down financing, low doc financing, so it's fast and easy, and make it easy for the consumer, or PPAs or leases, and harvest government incentives. That whole business model did not create substantial value because it didn't create substantial value to the end consumer. The winning business model...
Because it's too expensive?
It's expensive, and the cost of installing solar in the US is still over $3 a watt, whereas it's $1.50 or to $2 in Europe, and it's $1 in Australia. Just fundamentally different value proposition when you start from that high cost base. And a lot of that cost base is driven by all the financing schemes and the hidden costs in that whole system, and the soft costs and permitting. So I like starting in Europe or starting in Australia, or both, as a market to start with, because the value proposition to the consumer is just better.
But one question, but isn't like, yes, I agree that in the US the watt prices are higher, but isn't it also inherent with the business models we've seen? SolarCity, but also Sunrun, they have to move a lot of financing, a lot of debt, and then they are in the CAC, in the customer acquisition trap. So they spend a lot of money on marketing, ever more marketing, more leads, and so they're kind of, aren't they also in need of keeping the price tag very high, because otherwise they cannot even finance the customer acquisition cost they have. So it's both, right? It's not.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have this spiral of things that conspire against each other that lead to more difficult sales cycles, longer time periods, more cancellations, more embedded costs, and that all spirals to higher CAC, higher expenses, less and a worse value proposition to the consumer. So yes, those business models have not generated a lot of value. The business model that ultimately will generate the most value is the one that generates the most value for the consumer, where the consumer says, this is an amazing value proposition. I love it. I'm going to refer it to my friends, my neighbor, and my brother. And people go from being pushed into doing something they don't really understand to buying something that they do understand. And everyone understands savings. So once you can deliver that experience to a consumer, which you have right here in your heartbeat product,
little product placement
of ship them the box, have them plug it in, and all of a sudden they're saving half their energy cost or 2/3 of their energy cost with equipment they already have. That's magical. That's a magical experience, and presenting it in a way that the consumer understands. That is fantastic, because then they'll refer it, then it'll ultimately be bought, not sold, and you eliminate CAC entirely, and it can go into every home. The reality of the industry is, for the last 20 years, you go back 20 years, no one had solar, no one had batteries, no one had EVs, and so you have to have a model to get those out there and get the assets out there that you can optimize. We're now reaching a point where there are a lot of assets out there, including in markets like the US, where they can benefit from this optimization. Consumer plugs it in and gets a magical value proposition. They understand it because the app is clean and clear, and then they buy more of it. There is another business model which I think would be the ultimate if you could pull it off, which is going through the utilities. The utilities have everyone. And so if you look at Kraken, they're trying to go through utilities to deliver that value proposition. That would be magical if you could pull that off and get that same value proposition that Heartbeat offers to the consumer through the utility, that would be magical. It's proven to be difficult. Utilities aren't great at customer experience. They're not good at communicating with customers. They're not that trusted brand. So should the world try? Should Kraken try to deliver it? Absolutely. And they've been remarkably successful as a company doing billing management, et cetera, for
CRM.
ERP. Yeah, CRM, ERP for utilities. For fantastic company. If they can deliver this, then you would have the magical end game.
100%. I would say I would disagree actually on that fact. In my opinion, the European utilities will be too slow. And once you've reached it, it's exactly what you're saying is if we sell Heartbeat to a new customer, somebody who's never had solar, first time solar user, it's much more difficult to do that because they have never been using solar. They don't know the problems that we're solving. What we see with Heartbeat and that little box is for the first time we have customers who are willing to pay 500-600 euros just for the device because they have the problem that we actually want to prevent from happening. What is the problem? They have a tariff that has no clue about their home. It's not an intelligent tariff. They have a heat pump that is not connected to the solar system, doesn't even know it's there. They have a battery that doesn't fit their needs, and they don't have an overarching system that is connecting it to the energy market. And I would also add that, yes, I mean, obviously we also are opening now Heartbeat up. So we are asking especially grid operators and utilities to partake because we believe it's about the operating system. If you really want to have an impact, if Heartbeat would be applied just by 10% of German homes, the impact is hundreds of billions in savings for the consumer, for the grid operator. You'd have to invest less in grids. You'd have to you enable more generation of renewables because you don't curtail anymore, right? Because if you have utilized the grids better, so it is. I believe the main issue will be to understand mechanically a CRM and ERP is very important. And every utility will need a CRM and an ERP. But what's missing is the operational system that can actually deliver at scale behind the meter assets that are aggregated and steered. If you have a CRM and an ERP system as a utility, it gives you no control about the asset. So in my view, that's also what I like about the European place out there. Enphase is focusing on financing rental solutions. They do a lot of great stuff also for smart metering. It's important. Kraken is delivering amazing on CRM and ERP, and they have the ambition to go into Flex, and I think they will. But what's really missing is how can we actually make sure that all of those assets are really controllable? Because if you look at, some Kraken Flex products, Octopus products, most of them are single vertical products. So they optimize single assets instead of an entire home. And this is obviously what we try to contribute, to have this operating system that can just control the assets and deliver them for the utility, for the DSO. They both have a huge interest. If you're trading electricity, you want to make sure that you can back the forecast you make with real assets. And that's the first one. And the second one is if you're a DSO, it would be amazing if you would have control about those loads who are a pain in your butt today, right?
It's a win-win. All the studies would show that doing great behind-the-meter optimization is a win-win. The consumer saves money, the grid is more stable, the utilities make more money, everyone wins. And if you made me choose, I just showed a couple of different business models that I think could win. If you made me choose which one do I think is the most important, I think the most important is getting the behind-the-meter optimization right. I would choose that over being the best, fastest, cheapest, highest quality installer. I'd choose it over being the back office, systems provider to the utilities. The key is to make that consumer experience fantastic because that will ultimately pull it into every home in the world. And you've got to get that right. The other models aren't optimized for that. But the challenge, of course, is most people still don't even know what this is. They don't know what Heartbeat is, no matter how good your podcast is and how great your guests are. Most people don't know what it is, and that's where the flywheel has to go. You've got to get it out there, not just to 1.5 installed systems, but everyone who has a solar system, everyone who has a battery, everyone who has an EV should have a heartbeat system in their home, have that great experience, and tell their friends.
And as you know, since you're a board member, you do know it, the demand now is much larger from customers who have existing systems than from new customers, right? So it actually already works. So the people who, even if they bought somewhere else, even if the system is not from 1.5, they understand the value proposition. And that's the key. You have to be, if the more you electrify, the more important these solutions get to you or become to you.
I just made a case for why it's so important to have heartbeat behind the meter of every home. Where are we on the journey of getting heartbeat behind the meter of every home?
I think we are at a tipping point. We have invested the last 4 years a lot of time and resources in getting the stack that we need under control. The way we think about heartbeat is we want to deliver a full holistic optimization. What does it mean? We are not focusing just on one battery vertical, one charging device. We want to optimize the home, the building as a whole, towards own consumption, towards consumption behavior, and most importantly, towards energy markets. And in order to do that, we've learned the hard way that you need to control the full stack vertical. What does that mean? We need to deliver assets. First of all, we need to install those assets. Secondly, we need to make sure that the assets we are installed in a different way. Actually, if you use Heartbeat, you start designing and tailoring systems differently than if you would install a standalone system. So we learned how to change the fulfillment in the last mile to deliver a great home electrification experience when you get your assets or your systems. And the second thing is we then also learned data-wise, how do these assets actually behave on site and how do they behave if we interconnect them with the market? We are also a utility. We now have the full stack. So we build a new EMS. So the box here is an energy management system, right? It's some compute that you have in your home that is empowered by cloud. And then you start enabling the system. So I think in 23, the system started to work in the field only for our core customers. So it was a closed ecosystem. And in 24 and 25, we saw and we learned that we could optimize between various markets at the same time. In Sweden, we pre-qualified for frequency containment reserve. That's literally money you get for stabilizing the grid. We put our customers on day ahead market. What does it mean? You know your prices 1 day in advance, and you can then optimize each asset. Like, it's very simple. Customers also understand it. They see the price point goes down, and then they see how everything is charging when the price is low. So you buy when the price is low, and you sell when the price is high. And this had an effect that we can see that certain customer groups get to a net zero calculation. So they have sufficient income to cover their entire electricity cost. That's not for all of them, but we are still learning and seeing how we can empower the assets that we have on the platform. We are now on a run rate towards the first gigawatt, which is an equivalent to a nuclear power station, a large one. So we're getting critical mass. And the most important, I would say, single decision we made is that we are now ready to open up. So this box, you send it out, you buy it, it's sent to your home, you open it up, you can self-install it, you can obviously screw it to the wall if you want, but it also has a magnet, you can just clip it somewhere. You open up your app, you connect your system, and off you go. You switch your utility contract to us.
No installer, no electrician.
Nothing.
And when you ship that to the consumers, do they successfully install it themselves?
We are learning there to be completely honest and transparent about it. It really depends also what the setup is, right? We have certain appliances like Enphase, for example. It's seamless because we already know the product really well. We've tested this a lot. So we have different, let's say, rates of success for different products, but we are learning all the time. Right now, we have 0% of the consumers that received the box actually sending it back, right? That's the status quo. And why is that? When we saw these numbers, the first thing we ask our teams is like, this can't be right. Like, if you send this out, you would obviously we have cancellations before we send out. We do have cancellations of an order before we actually send out. But once the box has hit the customer so far, and we have not sold the hardware, none of them have sent it back. And we also understand now why the customers have a real problem. And the problem is so tangible that they are also willing to endure. For example, we have customers then upgrading the system. So we have customers who are running into a situation. They come to us, they buy the system, they go into our Heartbeat hotline, and they tell us, my heat pump is not is killing me. We had a very cold winter. They took the heat pump on. They have a 35% tariff, and they paid so much money. And now they learned that the cheap solar that they bought is, first of all, not large enough. Some of them have batteries with 1.6 kilowatt of draw capacity, which is way too low. So they now, basically what happens is all those companies that deliver a bad customer experience, that have been selling the wrong systems in a gold rush, they are coming to us, and they understand what we do, and they have a real problem. And once you are getting it hooked up, the problem is solved. So, for example, the heat pump is being steered. The battery has the right size in order to also buffer the heat pump, and then they have a big relief on their bill. And the ROI on the box is a couple of months. So this is how we explain it. I'm pretty sure that we'll see some returns. But right now these numbers are very encouraging. And also we see that we have almost a zero CAC there, because customers have the problem. There is no real competition also. Nobody wants these customers, because everyone else wants to sell new hardware. Yep. They are simply hunting the next customer.
Yeah. Obviously the value proposition is resonating. Help us understand it. So, and let's touch on regulations as well. I'm a customer in the Netherlands.
Yep.
I bought solar because there was a great system, net metering system. I've heard something about net metering going away. What should I do right now?
And is
Heartbeat part of that solution?
Yes, thank you for teeing it up for me, and I will knock it down the park now. If you look at, and you know it best, but if you look at solar and renewables, they all needed feed-in tariffs and net metering, which is a different kind of a subsidy. Net metering means you inject electricity and you can take it out for free later, which essentially is a free storage, and it's a subsidy, right? So it was needed in order to get those technology curves up. Now prices have come down, and governments and utilities are not willing, because the capacities are so large, to simply pay money for electricity that's not needed at the time, causing problems. So what happens is, and that's really important for the evolution of 1,5, what happens is there's going to be a natural end of those subsidies, and we are supporting that actively. We call
you lobbied against the feed-in tariff in Germany to get rid of it.
100%, and we get very sometimes bad press, and also we call it old solar, because the problem is if you create generators that are injecting electricity that no one needs, but the public is paying for, it's not going to work. It's dysfunctional, right? So you need to have a free market mechanism where somebody takes care of, I inject electricity when it makes sense. And that's what we do. We're selling it when there's a high price, when it's needed. And we are storing it and buying it back when the price is low, because nobody's needing it. So yes, in the Netherlands, you have about 3.5 to 4 million assets. They are all in net metering. On the 1st of January, all of this net metering ends. And this obviously is the perfect positioning for Heartbeat, because everyone will notice that they will even have to pay penalties if they inject electricity at the wrong time of the day, right? So we see a huge pull, and that's also the natural way of things. It's the final stage of growing renewables to a mature energy source, because from that point onwards, we have no subsidies at all. We generate electricity out of the sun, which is beautiful. We put it into the grid when it's needed. We take it out of the grid when it's also needed. It makes sense for the customer, and we balance the grid, and we are reducing the duck curve. This will happen starting from January in Holland. And there is currently legislation on the way, also in Germany, to do the same for Germany. And that's a huge step also. And green activists, they sometimes think that the feed-in tariff is a commitment to renewables. And what we argue is the feed-in tariff is part of the dysfunctionality. Getting rid of it and allowing platforms like Heartbeat to actually provide the service without subsidies is the greater service, because you're putting the system in balance. And that's what we do at the core. Heartbeat is not an arbitrage model for 1.5 customers. Heartbeat is an operating system that can actually bring balance between production of renewables and consumption. And that's what we need. That's the missing part for Europe. And if we do that at scale, I've referenced it before, we did a big study with other companies in that field. We can save 255 billion euros without any subsidies.
Amazing.
And get to that energy abundancy scenario, right? And that's what we want to do. Obviously, we're eager to do that, looking forward to the change in regulation. Let's hope it comes.
So that the Heartbeat service works very, very well in markets where there's volatile electricity prices and consumers can participate in that. What about markets like most of the US, where you have regulated fixed tariff? Does it apply here?
Yeah, I mean, there are different dimensions. Obviously, Texas and other deregulated states, we could just take our stack. And I think this is what I love about 1.5. We build two software stacks. One is, we call it the virtual assembly line. It allows us to deliver the home electrification tailor-made. So not a cookie cutter where everybody gets the same system. Also a mistake, I think, in the past, solar companies, heat pump companies, they try to have a cookie cutter with one system and they want to sell the same system settings to everyone because it suits them, not the customer. The virtual assembly line is AI-enabled software that allows us to have a tailor-made solution. So every solution potentially could be different for the customer because we look at the needs of the customer. Every building is different. So we have that software, which is enabling blue-collar work to become more efficient. It could be our own staff operating on the valve, so we could be our installers on it. It could be third-party installers operating on it. So this is something that, especially in the labor-heavy and labor-expensive California region, for example, could be really a game changer just for bringing down prices, increasing quality, and having tailored solutions. So this has nothing to do with Heartbeat AI. It's simply how do we deliver at scale home electrification. And this is something that at least we as a team, we see big potential for in the US, because the US is broke when it comes to cost of installation. It's ridiculous how expensive it is here. And the second one, and it's equally even more exciting, is that Heartbeat AI obviously has its full potential if we also deliver the energy layer, so the tariff comes from us. But if we look at California, PG&E does have flexible tariffs. PG&E does have demand response charges. So it does make a big difference already. When do I charge? When do I inject electricity? When do I consume electricity? And of course, we can enable that either for the utility or simply for the consumer who's optimizing behind the meter. Yeah, so it is probably a bit too early, but the ambition is at some point to absolutely enter with both stacks, virtual assembly line and Heartbeat AI, into the US. Yeah.
Great. I want to be customer number one in the US.
You will be, and we'll try everything out on you.
Why is it a box? Why can't we just spin up some cloud software that APIs into the battery and the EV charger? Why a piece of physical hardware?
Yeah, we get this question often, and in the end, there are multiple answers. I think the most important answer is that you need some compute on site. If you have issues with internet connection, I mean, we don't need 80% accuracy for what we operate. We need 99.9% accuracy for the trading we do, for the security that we have, and also for the reliance and the safety for the customer and the consumer. And it makes, you don't get to the level of data resolution and also optimization if you don't have compute on site. So we want to have a limited amount of compute in the home. So if there is any kind of failure of the internet and the connection to the cloud, that we can still operate the site. And of course, we are still connected to the cloud as well. So we have a hybrid model, and we think this is the best way to go. Another point is, if you think about energy systems today, you'll find every energy system is built as a silo, dumbed down and secured by the manufacturer. So why do I say dumbing it down? they want the installers not to make any mistakes. So every heat pump has its own energy management system. Every battery has its own energy management system. Every charge point has some kind of management system for the load management. We believe in the future, you'll see cheaper, better product connected by Heartbeat because you only need that one brain. Yeah, it's a bit like if you take Tesla and cars, German manufacturers had steering and devices in in the share in like everywhere. They had like hundreds of little chips operating within the car, and Tesla just unified this to one. So it is both a necessity and it's also the option to redesign energy solutions. We envision to bring prices further down for hardware assets because the intelligence, you don't need to have a BMS integrated everywhere. You don't need to have an EMS integrated. So, and there are multiple other answers. We like to have a product. You said, Philipp, nobody knows about Heartbeat, and you're right. And we want this to arrive on the kitchen table, and we want to have the discussion between the father and the sons and daughters about energy, and we want them to have this moment of changing the way how they consume electricity. So there's also an element of product marketing strategy in that.
Tell us the new vision of the future. When we first invested, you told me a vision about having this product, Heartbeat, and having it change the consumer's energy experience to deliver the best energy experience in the world. We're there. It's early, but we're there. Where are we going to be 5 years from now? What is the vision of success?
Now it's really about scaling to a significant level of capacity that we manage, right? So right now we're hopefully getting to a gigawatt, but once we are, let's say, 10, 20 gigawatts of flexibility that we can use decentral and play with, maybe a bit provocative to say play with, you get in a completely different realm that you can actually decide which wind park is going to be in the money in the future, right? You have a much larger impact from the business model perspective as well. Right now, we started to sell home electrification systems. So we sell you a heat pump. Great. Good gross margin on it, good product, customer's happy. Then we add the box, we sell it. Great. Then we are asset light and we get ARR, so recurring revenue for the optimization. That's already reality. Great. The power supply is going over our book. And the more power supply is going over our book, the higher the potential also from revenue is from there. But the real ambition at the end game is, do we get the level of magnitude that we can basically increase profitability for wind park operators, for the big solar parks? And can we really get to that level where we could also simply connect people who do not have any devices? If you have sufficient flexibility, you are in a position to optimize and trade power better than anyone else. So if you have a very large pool of assets that you can use to optimize, you can also enter the classical retail space of electricity. So essentially, we want to be the last utility subscription you ever sign, because you know that we will deliver to your metering point always the best price. Just by definition, it doesn't matter whether the price goes up or down. Simply because of our flexibility pooling and the optimization layers that we have, customers will know it's not possible to get a better price. I'll always have the best price per definition, and all I do is I pay a monthly subscription. So I think the way we think about electricity and utilities potentially might entirely change, and that would be the end stage. Now we need to be busy to delivering this to Holland, to Sweden, to Denmark, to Germany. We're active in all of these markets. To Australia, we're also entering there with Heartbeat, and also further expand our footprint into the UK and other markets.
Yeah, this point you just made just comes back to the business model discussion we had earlier. I believe the ultimate winner will be the company that owns that consumer experience, the one that is the trusted brand that consumers go to and say, they are going to help me minimize my energy supply and my energy cost. It's very, very hard for the utility to do that because there's a supplier of energy. It's very, very hard for a hardware-only provider to be that trusted party. 1,5 has the opportunity to be that trusted brand for consumers. What's the experience so far with consumers? Do they believe in 1.5? Do they trust 1.5? Is it that, Apple cult type experience that people say, I'm on this platform, I'm never going to change?
I would say, obviously, I would be praising ourselves, but we do not invest in marketing like some competitors at all. So we always think like marketing always means that you are, that you basically realize that you have to pay someone money to convince others to buy your product, right? So if you really do invest a lot into marketing, it's always failure of the business. You're compensating that your product is not sufficient, great enough, right? So I think we are in mentality very aligned on you need to have that referral customer. And I would say our customers trust 1.5. The EMS system is self-developed, is produced in Germany. Our servers are European and German. The software is developed there. So we want to be that trust brand where the customer can rely on that we will never act against their interest. We optimize not our portfolio. We optimize the metering point of the consumer, and it's fully transparent. So the customer, we have no part of our business model is against the interest of the customer. So we serve them. And you're right, every utility lives from bundling customers, then procuring in bulk for them, and taking a profit margin from it. And other, let's say, business models are around the idea of having one VPP pool that they control and they just share a fraction of the winnings with the owners of the assets. We are the other way around. We optimize the customer, we serve the customer, and I truly believe, and you know that I want to take 1.5 public. I would love to have many customers as co-owners of the company. And I think we need to safeguard this as well, not only because it will guarantee commercial success, but because it's why we founded the company. We want to have the operating system that makes Europe a low-cost, clean continent, and that's what we're doing. And we want to provide a solution that is always in line with the interest of the consumer. And they don't even have to think about it. They just know that our business model is built in that way. And I think we've succeeded in doing that. And we see we compared to the industry, we have the lowest CAC, meaning the lowest customer acquisition cost, right? Because consumers like us, they come to us, they are being referred. So yes, I'm happy that we are on the right track. Are we at our potential level yet? No, not at all. The potential to 10x, 20x, 100x is completely real. And in order to deliver a real value, we'll also need to do that. So the next 2 years are going to be really important to actually show that kind of growth.
Yeah. Investors, very focused on AI right now. They're obsessed with AI right now. Mm-hmm. Is 1.5 an AI investment? Is it benefiting from this AI megatrend?
I think I should ask you the question, right? I mean, I think, the way I spent now so much time in San Francisco and being in this community of AI-driven mania, but what I already see in the discussion with investors is everybody also understands energy. It's like, it's incredible. AI helps 1.5 in the discussion so much because everyone is an energy specialist. Everyone who's investing billions and trillions into the AI economy understands computers' energy. And they understand that their business model is threatened by it. And if it's not threatened directly, it's indirectly because the cost for consumers are going up. So they understand the infrastructure layer, they understand the energy layer, they understand they need low cost to compete with China. So I think right now everybody is, high on AI. But people start to see the link to energy. That's the first point. The second point is the kind of companies that are benefiting the most are those who are moving atoms. So to do stuff that you cannot replace by AI. We are not a SaaS company. We have our own software, yes, but within that we have very real proprietary data that we own. We have links into technology that require people, electricians, to show up in the morning. And we think that the sweet spot of enabling our business via AI to actually improve efficiency and profitability is humongous. So we believe we'll profit from that a lot. And at the same time, the business model cannot be replaced. right? And also power cannot be replaced. The atom needs to be produced and it needs to be put into the grid, right? And also we see investors are moving away from SaaS, and they're looking for the mode of that we provide as a business. I think is only starting to get the traction and attention that it deserves, but also will help our evaluation and I think also our ambitions. Yeah, we might just have to wait, but we can, since we are cash sufficient, we don't need any money, so we can execute from the power zone, right? But these are my thoughts. So yes, it is interesting to come in here and see everybody is like smoking the AI pipe, but you see that people are thinking beyond the hyperscalers, beyond the big LLM models, and I think there we are really well positioned. That's my take. What's your take? I mean, it's like, what do you see as an investor?
Well, obviously we're interested in AI as well. It's the biggest technology spend wave of all time. We are very interested in how do you build the data centers as green as possible, as efficiently as possible. That's Crusoe. We're very interested in how do you run the compute as efficiently as possible. That's companies like Cast and Vast that are in our portfolio that are making compute more efficient. And we're also very interested in applications which are defensible. And applications which touch the physical world are defensible applications. Pure software applications are tough right now. You've seen SaaSpocalypse. You've seen what's happened to valuations and defensibility. And so we love applications that touch the physical world because you can't easily replicate them. 1.5 is that. And we also love the downstream theme of more AI, more data centers, increasing grid volatility. There have to be solutions to that. That's going to be one of the biggest problems that we face. In fact, you can't build a data center right now unless you help solve that grid stability problem, and 1.5 is addressing that. So I'd say yes on two of those dimensions, physical AI with defensibility application and the theme of grid stabilizing the grid. 1.5 is a great play on the AI theme.
And I mean, the particularity about Europe also is data is owned. So we have not only the proprietary data that only we generate. I mean, if you look at we get the data from the manufacturers, we get the data. The home is the last, let's say, the last resort that has not been digitized fully yet, right? But we see the consumption behaviors of customers. So the data points that we aggregate are first-time data. It's not available publicly. And it's, first of all, regulated, and it is owned only by us and the consumer, right? And this is also why it's so important to have, in my view, a European trust brand. Because the amount of especially if you scale, trust that you will need from your consumers is large. Yeah, you need a trust brand to actually deliver that. And I personally, for us, AI is a powerful automation tool. So we will reach peak OpEx in developing. Yeah, so we have a lot of developers, and we love AI to help us to develop our code faster and more efficient. So we think it's amazing to see that there's a potential to have peak OpEx both in our development units, but also peak OpEx in the installation side, because the automation and software can help us to just become so much more efficient. So within 1.5, I think there's right now also an AI mania, because we see how many of the processes, for example, electrical planning, all the data points that we need to make that tailor-made solution, which has been very expensive in the past. That's why most companies had the cookie cutter. Those tailor-made solutions are now much simpler to generate for us, and much cheaper and better. So I think I can speak also for the team. If I talk to our operational teams, they are also in that mania. And I think it's very positive. And for European companies, it's also kind of freeing that you're out of the SaaS trap, right? I mean, we never, as you know, we never applied Salesforce. We never applied SAP. We always stood our ground from the beginning to have our own software layer that we also own. And so for us, AI, we don't have these barriers, right? If you're now stuck in Salesforce and SAP and Microsoft Dynamics at the same time, it's very difficult for you to take advantage of the tools AI is giving you, because they will make sure to somehow guard and break the flow of data, and we don't have that. So we are positive, and I'm an optimist anyways. So regardless of how they one would categorize us, we're extremely positive that the best is yet to come. So Ben, thank you very much for being here, spending the time, or for allowing me to visit you with our great podcast, and hope to see you soon in Germany.
Well, thank you for having me and coming to join us here in San Francisco for Climate Week. And thank you for building an amazing company. It's incredible to think how far you've come in just a handful of years, building a company with over $500 million or euros of sales, profitable, a leader in the industry and a trusted brand in solving these important energy problems. I'm still excited for that vision you first sold me on, which is that this amazing energy experience should be in every home in the world. Every consumer should love their energy supply, be saving money, and be greener. So let's manifest that future.
Let's do it. Thank you very much.